Alrighty. Okay, I think there we are. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world today. It's me, Tia Rodgers, ladies and gentlemen. We're here for Wealth Talk. If you just give me a few minutes, as I'm a little delayed right now, and I need to set up the Facebook group live as I'm going here trying to gather myself today. So I hope everyone's day was great and amazing. Um, hope you're accomplishing your goals. You're ready. Those that are preparing themselves to really position themselves for the rest of this year. You should have all your things in alignment, right? That's going to take for you to propel you to the top, right? At least get you in position for it. So, all right. Now I think we'll do it like that. Okay. Hello, hello. Live on YouTube. We're in Zoom, and we are live in Gain Financial Literacy and Win a Life group and Win a Life and Love What You Do private group. So we've been reading from Dr. Claude Anderson's Powernomics book, The National Plan to Empower Black America. So we're on part 2, where he begins to break down organizing for empowerment. I hope that you found this information enlightening and got some tips from it to begin as you're going on your journey of becoming better. This lighting is kind of throwing me off a little bit. But anyway, I'm just going to start reading and building competitive communities. This nation will be colorblind when whites proclaim their black blood like they proclaimed India and European images. A group's ability to compete is determined by its internal cohesiveness and self interest. Black Americans must therefore build functional communities within which they can ethno aggregate, then practice group economics and group politics. A functional community can best be defined as a grouping of people who come together and organize for their own self-interest rather than misdirected altruistic interests. Once built, whether based upon geographical boundaries, ethnic or racial commonalities, a community cares for the collective interest of its members. Building our own communities will allow Black Americans to become economically and politically competitive, but will also give us something we have never had, a chance to compete from the vantage point of our own physical space, culture, values, resources, institutions, and history. For the first time, we will be free to organize and work in our own best interests rather than the interests of a universe of ethnic and class competitors. Historically, societies were built upon 3 institutions that served as pillars: the family, the church, and the community. True communities are communities of mind and physical structures with a space. Both are important, but no traditional society built on land that it did not own or control, but has been successful or prospered. Neither the landless European serfs nor the landless Jews under the pharaohs of Egypt were able to do it. For this reason, Black Americans need a solid foundation of communities upon which to begin empowering themselves. Like Moses, we must begin to build physical communities and maintain a strong sense of community. Moses used his vision of the promised land to mobilize his people for a 40-year journey to a land upon which Jews built functional communities, families, religious institutes, commerce, schools, and a strong sense of a community. Boundary lines, the new color line. Nearly a century ago, W.E. Du Bois accurately proclaimed that the color line would be the problem of the 20th century. It is a new millennium now, and it is becoming clear that the problem of the 21st century will be community boundary lines. America is bacalizing along ethnic, community, and religious lines. Across America, groups are aggressively seeking territory or communities in which they can store their wealth, resources, and political power to enjoy and preserve for their future generations. As noted earlier, Hispanics, for example, are assembling their economic and political intentions behind their Spanish language and culture. They intend to use both to capture territory, rights, and a political base within the United States. The practice of seeking territory for communities will intensify as more and more people from around the world immigrate to America. They come to America in search of a better quality of life, not to integrate with whites or to get along with Black Americans. They are coming to this country to get ahead economically and to find wealth and fortune. They commit themselves to competing with any and all groups economically and politically on behalf of themselves, their families, and their native countries. Typically, their initial distinction, their initial destination is close to or within Black neighborhoods. They have learned from official and unofficial sources that they can find great opportunities in Black neighborhoods. Within Black neighborhoods, ethnic immigrants expect to find the least expensive housing, lax enforcement of laws and regulation, and little business competition. They also find readily accessible consumers, government assistance, easy access to elected officials, and employment opportunities. Though they are aware of the crime problem in Black neighborhoods, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. They find territory and build communities. As ethnics fill in business voids in Black neighborhoods with a modicum of success, they begin to practice ethno-aggression. They bring in and aggregate their families and others from their native lands. They then develop more businesses in Black neighborhoods. As they capture territory, they establish powerful economics and political organizations, using their ethnic culture, language, and religion as their common ground. Watching how these new arriving immigrants use a sense of community to build social and economic power base should be instructional for Black Americans. It takes a full functional community to raise a child and to raise up a competitive race of people. Neighborhoods are not enough. Neighborhoods are problematic for any group seeking empowerment. Unfortunately, most Black Americans live in neighborhoods, not communities. A community signifies commitment and the potential for power. Neighborhood does not, Webster's New World Dictionary defines neighborhood as a vicinity or physical place where there are people living near one another. The concept of a neighborhood implies an area that is residential in nature with lesser wealth, power, and status than a community. The majority of Black Americans live in impoverished Black neighborhoods and spend approximately 95% of their annual disposable income with people who live outside of the neighborhood. They spend only 5% of their disposable income in Black neighborhoods. They spend 3% with non-Black owned businesses that are located in Black neighborhoods, but whose owners live outside of Black neighborhoods. Thus, only 2% of Black Americans' disposable income is spent in Black-owned businesses in Black neighborhoods. It is impossible for any large population or neighborhood to be self-sufficient on only 2% of its income. By spending its disposable income in other groups, businesses, and communities, Black America impoverishes itself and impedes the growth of functional communities. On behalf of Jim Crow segregation was that it forced Blacks to build what could appropriately be called quasi communities, unlike neighborhoods where people simply live in the same area. During Jim Crow segregation, Black Americans were unified with a code of conduct. They lived together because they had the same interests and needs, but equality as important. They trusted and depended on each other. From the Civil War until the end of the Black Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s. Blacks successfully built a vibrant culture, marginally competitive schools, Black churches, personal service businesses, and a professional class. Though they were small in number, these community assets produced jobs as well as products and services for Black people. The desire for integration caused Blacks to abandon their businesses, communities, culture, and the code of conduct. Black Americans' need to be accepted by white society was greater than their need to be accepted by Black society. Today's Black neighborhoods no longer qualify to even be called quasi communities because they no longer have a network of Black businesses or a group code of conduct. Today, Black neighborhoods are primarily where the majority of Black people eat and sleep. They do not embody the criteria for a functional community. Consequently, Black neighborhoods are typically referred to as ghettos, urban areas, inner cities, or they are sometimes identified by terms such as the hood. These broad, ambiguous terms signal that dependent, non-competitive nature of Black geographical areas across the country. Developing a true sense of community. What is a sense of community and why is it important? A sense of community is the collective thinking, seeing, and behaving as we, not as me. Social integration has intensified our need for a strong sense of community or a sense of peoplehood, having abandoned their quasi communities, culture, schools, businesses for the integration promised land, many Black Americans cannot easily return to physical communities that are primarily Black. Those who cannot return can exercise an option. They can identify with Black physical communities and organizations via their mindset, actions, and support. This strong identification and support is what is commonly referred to as a sense of community or a sense of peoplehood. It is what people feel when they have a strong psychological identification with a physical community and its inhabitants. They are attracted to and desire the culture. They desire the cultural familiarity, security, and satisfaction they receive from association with these communities. The psychological damage Blacks have experienced as a result of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, and racism will pose significant challenges to a developing strong sense of community. The impact of social engineering on communities. Throughout the relationship between Blacks and whites, the majority white society has kept Black Americans under various forms of control, physical, legal, and symbolic. The majority society, through its primary institutions, has used rudimentary sociological and psychological principles to control Blacks and deprive them of their sense of peoplehood. In such a state, Black people could easily be misled into inappropriate behavior, identifying with the oppressor's groups and hating their own group. This is not a conspiracy theory. The facts are evident in the marked inequalities between the races and the continued inappropriate behavior patterns of Black Americans. There is no other way to explain why historical inequalities remain unchanged and Black Americans continue to cede and surrender their wealth and resource powers to their competitors, while their own family, community, and the race as a whole remains powerless and impoverished. These are neither innate nor normal behavior characteristics. So let us examine their origins. Research suggests that aberrant group behaviors among Blacks began in 1710 and were formalized into law when the Virginia colonial government introduced matrias manumission, a public policy that was used to condition and install internal controls into the psyche of enslaved Blacks. The practice rewarded Blacks who saw slavery through the eyes of the white society, were willing to work against their own group's best interests and inform on members of their race who were planning to escape and free other Blacks. This social engineering effectively destroyed most Black people's sense of community, trust, and accountability. Though undocumented, many Black Americans believe that soon after its inception, matriarchs manimus missions was merged into what we now call Willie Lynchism. According to popular belief, Willie Lynch came to Jamestown, Virginia in 1712, offering a mind-controlling ideology to destroy Black people's sense of community. A professional slave trader, Willie Lynch offered the slaveholders a conditioning system that he guaranteed would instill internal controls that would effectively divide blacks for centuries. He proposed the slave masters create divisions among blacks and separate them along the lines of gender, age, tribe, culture, class rank, and skin color. To this day, the effects of Willie Lynchism continue to encourage Black individualism, selflessness, and self-hatred. Though slavery and Jim Crow semi-slavery officially ended in 1865 and 1954, respectively, no formal records are known to have been kept that explain the principles and techniques involved in the conditioning process. If our goal is to build functional communities, we can, however, understand the techniques and methods that were used to destroy our sense of community. We can more fully understand what happened if we analyze a similar and better documented mind controlled experiment that occurred during the Korean War of the 1950s. Metrics manumissions versus brainwashing. Both American soldiers held in North Korea, prisoners of war, POW, camps during the 1950s, and enslaved Black people were psychologically and physiologically manipulated in parallel ways. The communist North Korean army and its Chinese consorts used brainwashing on American soldiers. Slavery used conditioning. The biggest difference between the two systems was the extreme physical cruelty of slavery. Both systems were designed to tear people apart. In many ways, communist brainwashing was a combination of metrics, manumissions, and Willie Lynchism. It was a sophisticated form of re-education that operated like group therapy, run in reverse. But unlike group therapy intended to bring people together, communist brainwashing and metrics manumissions were designed to drive people apart from one another. The larger purpose of these social conditioning systems was to destroy the ability of the subjects to form natural groups and communities, develop normal relationships, support, protect, and communicate with members of their own group. Table 2 offers a brief comparative analysis of the brainwashing of military captives in North Korea and China over a 3-year period, and the metrics manumissions policies, Willie Lynchism, imposed on Blacks for several centuries. The table compares the similarities between the goals, psychological principles, rewards, punishments, and resilient behavior changes. The result of the two systems were nearly identical in every respect, but in each instance, the subjects identified with the oppressors and were often unwilling to return to their former communities to be with their own people. The brainwashed POWs who survived were hospitalized and then deprogrammed. No such therapy has ever been offered to Black Americans. So we'll go into the other portion tomorrow, which is brainwashing. But you can't talk about the economic integration without the universal laws. Let's see, do it like this for It's a little harder when I'm trying to get it on. There it is. Do it like that. Yeah. For you guys on YouTube. So we're going to talk about the law of action tonight. And it begins with the 7 universal laws of success is the law of action. This universal law governs the manner or method of performing the activities of life. It is the methodology by which the principles of success are actually implemented on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. The law of action encompasses your behavior, conduct, habits, and method of operation. It is the operating process by which your thoughts and feelings become the things and experiences of your life. But be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. James chapter 1, verse 22. All that is written in this book and all other instruments of enlightenment are absolutely worthless unless you put these ideas and principles into action. On a practical level, the universal law of action focuses on the following. 1, the work, employment you perform for material survival. 2, planning your actions to produce desired results. 3, achieving your goals and vision of life. 4, overcoming obstacles and challenges that confront you. Then we talk about the right work. Work is generally defined as a means to earn a living. In a broader sense, work is the physical or mental effort or activity directed toward producing or accomplishing a desired result. If I ask the question, why do you work? Most people will give the same basic answer: to make a living. What are you getting out of your work? Generally, the objective of the physical and mental activity of getting up each morning, getting dressed, and rushing to your place of employment is to obtain the money to meet the material requirements of your life. If all that you are getting out of work is the financial wherewithal to take care of yourself, then you are being grossly underpaid no matter how much you make. As long as the objective of your work is something outside yourself, you are being shortchanged. When you think of work as something external to obtain external objectives, you are cutting yourself off from the true meaning and essence of work. In fact, as long as you consider work as an external endeavor, you will delay your success in life. Work must be considered on an internal spiritual level. It should not be seen as a means to make a living, but rather as a means to live your making. Your work should be an external expression of your internal state of being or level of consciousness. Work should be by means by which you can express your internal good desires and which provides the required material sustenance to maintain and enhance the condition of your life. Work has a divine spiritual nature, which, when properly attuned, can put you in harmony with the cosmic flow of good, success, and everlasting reward. When your work does this, it is your right work. How do you find your right work? Make the most of your present situation. Develop a positive, wholesome attitude toward work in general, and specifically toward the work you are doing right now. Sometimes you find yourself working at something you do not particularly care for. When you are just getting started in your work career, or while you are near the bottom of the success ladder, however, it is your attitude and reaction to your work at this point which determines if you will continue at the bottom or move up the success ladder. If you constantly complain about your present work, blaming yourself and others for your condition, you will probably not progress much further. You will go from job to job, always unhappy, always complaining, never progressing. If you take charge of your attitude and condition it to seeing the good and positive aspects of your present work situation, then you are laying the spiritual foundation for positive change toward your right work. Recognize that your present work is for a purpose. Believe that this purpose is to develop divine qualities of patience, persistence, understanding, and discipline. These qualities will lead you to your right work. When you look at your work as an external expression of your internal desire, then you must do your very best in performing this work for your desires to be fulfilled. This is the principle of work stated in the Bible. Whosoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with all thy might. And that's Ecclesiastes 9:10. If you hold back on your work, then you should also hold back on the fulfillment of your internal desires. At the beginning stages of your success journey, your internal desires may not be clearly defined in your conscious mind. It is through this principle of work that your internal desires are revealed to you. Give your body, mind, and spirit to your work, believing that it is for a divine purpose. This committed action will guide you to your right work and ultimately to your life purpose. So we're going to end there tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll be back to you tomorrow so we can wrap up some more of Powernomics and the 12 universal laws of success as they go hand in hand. As you are building yourself, becoming more self-aware, discovering who you are, taking control of the paradigm of your mind and mapping out and writing down your goals and working the plan of your goals out. Remember that the universal laws goes along with that. There's other things, and always pursue what you enjoy doing. Because if you enjoy doing it, then it doesn't feel like work to you. And that's what life is all about, right? To live a healthy, vital life, doing what makes us happy as well as serving others, and building and working together. So I want to thank you guys for this evening, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow in the morning for Tammy's motivation. Thank you very much. So we're going to say goodbye to the group, and we're going to say goodnight to YouTube. Good night, YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Please leave comments. Please like and share. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. See you guys tomorrow.